Ever since the beginning of Minecraft multiplayer, one thing has been clear. You can either build or destroy. It's the one major choice all players make whenever they are playing Minecraft with others. Some players choose to play Minecraft as the good guy, being kind to others, helping them build, and surviving together. Others choose to embrace the freedom and chaos, making griefing their primary or sole goal in the game. But is Minecraft griefing a good part of the game? While servers do exist that allow players to grief, most Minecraft servers these days disallow it. While early in Minecraft's multiplayer scene, you would find a wide array of communities where combat and griefing was the norm, these days players seem to hate it, and those older servers are all but gone. Is the lack of griefing and threats from other players ruining the survival in survival Minecraft? Is griefing bad for the game? Today we talk about Minecraft griefing and if it's good or bad. But before we do, make sure to destroy that subscribe button for me. No pressure, of course. So first of all, what is griefing? Well, it can differ from game to game, but generally speaking, as Wikipedia has put it, a griefer is a player in a multiplayer game who deliberately irritates and harasses other players by using aspects of the game in unintended ways. So for example, you could say players using end crystals to kill others or blow up their base is an aspect of Minecraft being used in an unintended way. But then, that begs the question, is griefing meant to be a part of Minecraft? Is blowing up somebody's base and killing other players with weapons an intended mechanic of the game? Let's look at the facts first. Vanilla Minecraft by itself offers very little means for players to protect themselves from griefing. If you set up a vanilla Minecraft server, you can protect the spawn, disable PvP, and that's about it. Single player is a similar story. By default, when you create a new Minecraft world, mobs have the ability to destroy your base and kill you, and the difficulty by default is set to normal. Now of course you can change these settings, but a new player going into the game unknowingly is prone to griefing from mobs. In addition, there isn't really any in-game ways a player can protect their base from being griefed. Plugins that allow players to claim land weren't created by Mojang, but rather by the community. Same goes for chest protection. It's not part of the vanilla game. To this day, there is no way to prevent a player from destroying your base or accessing your chests in vanilla Minecraft. So, with this information, it seems that while griefing in Minecraft certainly isn't explicitly encouraged by Mojang, and certainly wasn't meant to be the main focus of the game as intended by Notch, it seems like it was meant to be a core element of Minecraft. I made that same argument in a video I created talking about griefing almost 2 years ago when I only had 800 or so subs, and let's say a more chaotic outlook on the game. The comments on that video had some good counter-arguments. I think it's not that Mojang intended for the game to have griefing and for players to go around leaving a trail of fire and blood wherever they went. I think what Notch really wanted and what Minecraft is all about is for players to have total freedom. So then, if total freedom is the intent behind Minecraft, then why is griefing still so frowned upon? And it's simple. Griefing is unfair. It's unbalanced. Let's say you spend an hour building a nice small house. You collect the resources, plan it out, and critically think about how you want the house to look. Alright, nice. Now, how long would it take for a player to grief said house? If they used only iron tools, for example, maybe a few minutes tops. If they had half a brain and used flint and steel, then maybe 20 or 30 seconds. And if they used a couple blocks of TNT, it wouldn't even take 10 seconds. And that's the main issue with griefing. The time it takes to grief a base is so little compared to the time it would take to build a base. Griefing at its core is unbalanced, which therefore makes it unfair. Even if you removed all blocks or methods of griefing and gave players only basic tools to grief with, it still wouldn't be fair, as not only is griefing far less time consuming, but it requires far less thought. If you're building a base, you're likely not just building it rapidly and spamming blocks down. You're taking time to step back, consider the blocks you're using, and the aspects of the build. Maybe even building something, disliking it, and rebuilding it differently again. Griefing doesn't require any of this. You can for the most part just turn your brain off and mash some buttons. There is an argument that could be made that if a player's base is griefed, they are also at fault themselves. Minecraft is a vast open world, spanning tens of millions of blocks, as well as hundreds of blocks down underground. Maybe the player should have built their base further out or hit it better underground, and theoretically that should be true, but in practice it unfortunately doesn't work. While yes, Minecraft worlds are massive, most SMPs have world borders around 10,000 blocks in each direction, some even less, drastically reducing the amount of space there is for players to build their base. Furthermore, players intent on griefing aren't playing fair. They often use hacked clients, X-ray, and chest ESP, meaning no underground base is ever truly hidden. That's why most players dislike griefing, because the time and effort required to build a base is not even comparable to the time and effort required to grief one. But worst of all, the reason griefing is so unbalanced is because there are no repercussions for griefers. If a player's base gets griefed, the repercussions are that they lose a lot of items, resources, and time. But if a server allows griefing and a player's base is griefed, then the griefer loses nothing. In fact, they often gain something. Unless a player stays online 24/7 to kill anybody who attempts to grief their base, there's eventually going to be somebody who comes along when they aren't online and destroys it. You're not going to know who did it, and probably won't ever see the player again, which means there's nothing you can do to get back at them, or serve them justice for their wrongdoings. You just have to suck it up and either build a new base, or become a griefer yourself. There's no winning for the player in this situation. Here's the thing though, it's called survival Minecraft for a reason. You have to survive against not only mobs and other game challenges, but also against other players. If you join any odd SMP these days, you will likely start with a bunch of gear, food, blocks, as well as a warp out to the wild, allowing you to start building your base with no issues almost right away. Furthermore, these servers often have land claims, chest protection, PvP disabled, and mobs will hardly be a threat because they won't spawn in as high frequency as they would if you were playing single player. That's not survival Minecraft. There's no surviving here. Sure, while griefing isn't exactly balanced or fair, it still presents a challenge to the player, same with PvP, which both contribute to the survival feel of the game. When you take away almost all of the challenges and threats to a player's life, you're ruining the survival aspect of survival mode. Look, there's nothing wrong with these newer age survival servers existing, but the issue is they seem to be the only type of survival server out there. It's incredibly difficult to find a somewhat active survival Minecraft server where griefing and PvP are allowed that isn't an anarchy server. So rare in fact, that apart from the SMP I run on my server, og-network.net, which allows PvP and griefing, I don't know of any others off the top of my head. At least not any that are relatively active. This is also why anarchy servers have become so popular as of later years. Since there is a lack of proper survival servers, players turn to anarchy servers where anything goes, including griefing and combat. But I also don't think anarchy servers are true survival either, as the use of hacked clients automatically makes some of the natural challenges of Minecraft null and void. If there was a scale, and on one end are anarchy servers, and on the other end are these new style survival servers, what we are missing is what's right in the middle, a true survival server. These servers used to be the norm back in 2012 and earlier, when quite simply, there weren't really any other options, and as such, everybody had to play on them. That's no longer the case, and as Minecraft plugins continue to develop, allowing players to create their idea of a perfect Minecraft server, the communities began to drift further and further apart. But I understand the other perspective as well. Some players just want to build a base with others or want to replicate their feeling of an SMP with friends and don't want to see their hours of work be destroyed. It's just unfortunate that these days SMPs only tend to be one of the extremes, either being anarchy or far too protective. So, we know the issue now. Griefing isn't balanced, and that has led to a massive divide in the Minecraft community between players who want to grief and choose to play anarchy servers, and players who would rather not, choosing to play new style survival servers instead. These two groups of players rarely intermingle because they have their own goals when playing the game that are opposite of one another. Sure, not all anarchy players play solely to grief, and not all new style SMP players think PvP or light griefing is bad. But in general, if you play on an anarchy server, you build knowing you can be griefed, and if you play on a new style SMP, you build knowing you can't. In order to see the return of older SMP servers where all kinds of players, griefer or not, would play together, we need to balance griefing. And there's two ways this can be done. First of all, the time required to grief a base needs to be somehow increased so that it's similar to the time required to build a base. This is very tough, however. Let's say that TNT and other mass forms of griefing were disabled, and therefore the only way to grief bases was through simple destruction. This would help balance griefing, making it more time consuming, but it will never be even. It can also harm the server in other ways. For example, disabling TNT to prevent griefing also may ruin other players' farms or methods of terraforming and digging out large areas. It's very hard to balance griefing when it comes to disabling core Minecraft features without there being significant drawbacks. That's why I think the better and second method of balancing griefing could work better, and that is to give griefers repercussions for their actions. If griefing had repercussions that made it so a griefer was actually at risk of losing something or facing consequences, griefing would be a lot more balanced. Let's say a player becomes known for spawn camping or killing newer players on a server. There could be repercussions for that player. For example, every 5 kills that player gets, he loses 1 heart permanently. This would not only give griefing a downside, but also make it so the griefer has to actively consider if a player is worth killing or not. They have to weigh up the pros and cons. Similar can be done for base griefing. Let's say a player blows up a base. If the original base creator could somehow check and see who blew it up, they could be given the option to seek revenge on the player, maybe through exposing the player's current coordinates. This would make it so the griefer would have to be careful where they would go after they grief a base, as they could in turn have their base location exposed. And if they continue to grief over and over, the griefer's coordinates could be exposed 24/7, meaning all players on the server would know where they are at all times. If griefing had clear downsides, it would make it so much more balanced because now the griefer is at risk themselves. It may deter players from playing solely to grief. So then, why don't servers do this, you may be asking? Because unfortunately in practice, it rarely works out. You see, on my server we created a reputation system where players could add or remove player reputation. If a player's reputation entered the negatives, they would progressively begin receiving punishments. For example, they lose the ability to teleport to spawn or their home, and eventually their coordinates are permanently displayed on the tab menu. The idea behind this system would be that players would down-rep griefers, and eventually the griefers would either have to stop griefing as to prevent themselves from losing reputation, or start doing good deeds to gain back their reputation. Reputation, in a sense, was meant to be a sign of trustworthiness. In theory, it sounds solid, right? Well, I thought so too, but as the more active players on the server would let you know, in practice, that isn't exactly the case. Players would frequently false rep one another, buy and sell rep as well, which while we tried to moderate, is almost impossible to prevent. At the end of the day, as all players do, they found ways to abuse the reputation system, and over time, as less and less people found it reliable, less and less people went through the effort of down-repping wrongdoers. Rep became more of a popularity measurement rather than anything to do with trustworthiness, and this is one of the problems with trying to balance griefing. Players, no matter what, will find loopholes or figure out ways to abuse the system. There very well may be a good solution to griefing out there, I just don't think it's been found yet, and due to the difficulty in balancing griefing, most servers just choose to outlaw it altogether, so they don't have to deal with the issues surrounding it at all. I mentioned earlier that I made a video discussing griefing a while ago when I had a more chaotic outlook on the game. My golden years of Minecraft were in 2012 and 2013 when servers weren't nearly as polished and SMPs and faction servers were everywhere. I grew up playing Minecraft servers where you would walk out of the spawn to find ruin and players fighting almost instantly, where X-ray was used by half of the server's players and where base and chest protection was very hit or miss. I would spend my days eagerly X-raying chests around the map, pillaging people's bases and leaving them behind in ruins, then running away to my secret underground stash and building up my wealth. So what changed then? What happened to all these older style Minecraft SMPs? Where did they go? It wasn't until I began my own SMP with PvP and griefing earlier last year that I began to understand why Minecraft multiplayer had become this way. In Minecraft's earlier days, when survival servers were at their peak, players didn't know the game as well. There weren't as developed cheats or methods of griefing and destruction, servers were smaller with much less player capacity, and more tight-knit communities. Griefers were known on the servers they griefed on, their name would spread through word of mouth. Servers could maintain and control most griefers with minimal issue. But these days, where griefers are far more crafty than ever, cheats are more powerful and prominent than ever, and servers are far bigger and much harder to moderate, it's simply just easier to disable griefing altogether. No longer would you have to deal with players complaining their base got griefed, or players quitting because they kept getting killed. It just made more sense to disable it altogether, as it would lead to far less issues. I get it now. After dealing with and hearing about countless complaints and issues related to griefing on my own server, I get why other servers want nothing to do with it. To answer the question we set out to today, no, I don't think griefing is bad, I just think the way it's carried out can be. And yes, I still believe that griefing is a core part of survival Minecraft, and without it, Minecraft just isn't the same. My server will forever have griefing and PvP enabled. I won't let the true style of Minecraft survival die. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Be sure to let me know what your thoughts on griefing are in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching.